who's as adamant about his or her position as I am about mine, whom you think is sharp. Seriously, we know that. And another thing, we heard him say that... Hey sports fans, Larry Elder again, and another edition of And Another Thing. This is episode number 22. I want to start out with a commentary about the why of what happened at the Boston Marathon. As you well know, two brothers set two bombs at the Boston Marathon that killed three people, actually four when you count the MIT police officer who was killed in the shootout. Four people were ultimately killed in connection with that crime, and several people maimed, several people dismembered, and over 150 wounded. The younger one came to the country when he was 8 years old. The older one, Tamerlan, came here when he was like 16, 17 years old and apparently never adjusted. And later on posted something saying, I don't have a single American friend. By the way, there is some allegation that he was implicated in a triple homicide unsolved that killed his only American friend, but I digress. Anyway, Tamerlan had issues. But the younger one was described as somebody who spoke accentless English. He was, quote, Americanized, close quote. Several of his friends used that very expression to describe Dzhokhar. He was well liked, he was popular, he was the captain of his wrestling team. He seemed to have been very well adjusted, didn't have any anger, was popular, was funny, and suddenly he joins his brother in this jihadi mission that massacred a lot of people. President Obama said we're going to find out who did it shortly after the Boston bombings took place, and then he said we're going to find out why. Well, now we know the who, let's find out now the why. What we're hearing are all sorts of kinds of speculation that he was a homegrown terrorist, that he had been inspired by. All I'm saying is, why aren't we looking at that as a possible factor? Because one more time, it means that people on the left have to look themselves in the mirror and say to themselves, if they're being honest, maybe, just maybe, my policies have made things worse. We talked about that in connection with gun violence. I told Piers Morgan that as horrific as Sandy Hook was, the face of gun violence is not some kid in the suburb. It's a black or brown kid in the inner city being killed, usually as a result of gang violence. Well, why do so many kids join gangs? Because so many kids are raised in households without any fathers. Why are so many kids raised in households without any fathers? Because we have financially given people incentives into making bad decisions. And if you want to make the argument that George W. Bush was a polarizing president, if the definition of polarization is how Republicans feel about the opposite guy's president versus how the Democrats feel about their opposite guy's president, that gap right there, the gap between how Republicans and Democrats feel about Obama is as wide as the gap ever was under George W. Bush. George W. Bush's largest gap was 2005, 2006, a year or two after the Iraq War. By the time he had left office, the partisan gap had narrowed. Right now, the partisan gap is as wide as it was in 2005, 2006, when George W. Bush was at his nadir. Now, does anybody call Obama polarizing? Does anybody ever use that word? No. When people talk about how disrespectful people have been toward President Obama, I always say two things. Short memories. Let's do this. I hope you enjoyed this small excerpt. If you want to see the full video, got to be in El Dorado. Go to my website, larryelder.com, log in, fill out the form. It'll cost you about $4.75 a month, or about the price of a mocha frappuccino latte at your favorite coffee house. As you can tell, I don't like coffee. I'm a tea drinker. See you next time.